Right-wingers and MAGA snowflakes are still very triggered by the recent Colorado Supreme Court decision to kick Donald Trump off their ballot in 2024 because he's an insurrectionist who violated Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And so on her most recent appearance on the Fox Propaganda Network, Jessica Tarlov sparred with two triggered Trump-sympathizing guests and a Trump-sympathizing host. And despite being outnumbered 3-1, she still predictably emerged victorious on the facts. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. All right, folks, I've got several clips to play. Again, Jessica Tarlov is always great on the Fox Propaganda Network because she's like a one-woman wrecking ball. She just destroys everything in her path with impunity. I wish she would have been on the most recent episode of The Five in which the Colorado Supreme Court's decision was discussed, but she wasn't there, and I wish she would have been to rub it in the faces of Greg Gutfeld and Dana Perino and Jesse Waters, because otherwise their opinion went unchallenged. But as a consolation prize, she was invited by Bret Baier to appear on a panel on Special Report, and she's up against Jason Riley, who is like an op-ed writer at the Wall Street Journal. He's a Trump-sympathizing person. He's very triggered. And then you have Hugh Hewitt, who is also a right-wing radio host and I think a lawyer, and he's also Trump-sympathizing and very triggered. And then Bret Baier himself, who obviously leans more to Trump compared to President Biden. So let's play the clip and we'll unpack it together.
Reaction, Jessica, today. If you look at this Real Clear Politics chart, it's really interesting. The Trump support, the nomination support around his legal woes, specifically, as they happen, the support continues to go up around each one of these moments. And the Colorado moment is just seeming to increase both financially, his support, and in the polls.
Yeah, I would expect that to continue, though. It is an important caveat that when people are polled about how you feel about supporting President Trump, if he's convicted of one of these things, then it drops, and Joe Biden becomes the clear winner in all of the swing states and in the general election. It will be very interesting to see how this plays out. I've taken in a lot of the commentary on both sides of the decision, and I think that in particular, we're all going to be watching Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch, who has actually already ruled on this issue when he was on the Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit. So the case was Hassan v. Colorado. I hope that I'm pronouncing Hassan correctly. And he wrote, and it is quoted in the majority opinion in the Colorado case, that the state does have a right to kick someone who is ineligible to run off of the ballot. And it's interesting in the dissents, and Hugh didn't mention this, that the three dissenting justices did not refute the idea that Donald Trump played a part in this insurrection, which under Section 3 of Article 14 should rule him ineligible to be running for office. They talked about lack of due process, but they didn't engage with any of the evidence that was presented at a 5-day bench trial. They just said he didn't get his due process.
But I guess, Jessica, the other point is that he hasn't been charged officially with that.
No, but that's also not stipulated in Section 3 that you have to be charged. It's not there. I understand that that's the case that they will make, but it will be very difficult for Neil Gorsuch to go back on something that he has essentially already ruled on, and especially if the dissenting justices aren't making it seems that solid of a case.
Point.
So there you go. Again, a one-woman wrecking ball. She's so good at what she does. And the guy opposite her, the older white guy shaking his head, very smugly, that's Hugh Hewitt. So I'm going to play a clip where Jessica starts to respond to something that's said later, and then Hugh Hewitt gets his turn, and you're just going to see again how he's wrong on the facts.
Process here.
Jason,
Jessica,
really quickly, though. 2 points on that. One, this case was brought by a group of Republicans. It was not brought by Democrats. This doesn't have to do with leftist politics. And Donald Trump is the only person running for president who challenged our Constitution. The one who said, actually, this election should not stand, and asked Mike Pence to, quote, do the right thing. That is not something that a Democrat ever did.
Jessica, this is the worst legal take
I've ever heard.
It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd for a non-lawyer to sit here and say that minus a confrontation with someone who has not been charged, much less convicted, that the court can take them off the ballot. It is a shameful moment in American jurisprudence. It is like watching a bad high school musical. It is a cringe-inducing moment.
So Hugh Hewitt, again, is very obviously in his feels about this, and he's taking the position that, listen, you actually do need to be charged and convicted of insurrection before you can be disqualified by Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And then he, I guess, mocks Jessica Tarlov because she's not an attorney, even though, again, the Supreme Court justices on the Colorado Supreme Court are attorneys, and they seem to disagree with Hewitt. But again, we'll get to all that in a minute. Let's return to what Section 3 of the 14th Amendment says, okay, to be very clear. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such a disability. So no person shall, having engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same. Man, I'm looking here and I don't see anything about conviction or any sort of like criminal statute. Because again, this doesn't involve jail time or any sort of fine. It's a disability. It means you just can't hold public office, which, by the way, you don't have a right to do anyway. But don't take it from me. I'm not an attorney. Don't even take it from Jessica Tarlov if you're a legal snob. I get it. How about Lawrence Tribe? An infinitely, objectively, vastly superior and much more celebrated attorney than Hugh Hewitt ever was, ever shall be. A guy who literally wrote the book on American constitutional law, a guy who has taught a gazillion attorneys, including President Obama, as a professor at Harvard Law. Again, so infinitely, objectively, miles superior to Hugh Hewitt. This is what Lawrence Tribe has to say.
This is a provision that is not triggered by a civil or criminal verdict. It basically says, we're not trying to punish someone through this provision. We're simply trying to take them out of the running. Once you have taken an oath to the U.S. Constitution for an office under the United States, if you then engage in an insurrection, and the definition of insurrection may be different in this context from what it is in the criminal context, once you engage in an attempt to overturn the Constitution, you can't hold office again.
So there you have it. And then you have William Bode and Michael Stokes Paulson and Michael Luttig. All of these are conservative attorneys and legal scholars. Again, objectively vastly superior to Hugh Hewitt, who's a schmuck in comparison. They all say the same thing. So again, to whatever extent that it matters, the preponderance of the legal consensus with respect to the 14th Amendment sits squarely on the side of the Colorado Supreme Court. And the conservatives who disagree are simply outmatched. But it goes to show that even among those who agree, many of them are conservatives themselves. That's how clear this definition is. So even though she's not an attorney, Jessica Tarlov just spanked an attorney, just spanked a Fox News host, and just spanked a Wall Street Journal opinion writer all at the same time because she's better than they are. She's better on the facts. She understands these things better. And there's nothing that the right can really do about it. They'll always lose the debate every time. And I say that knowing full well that the United States Supreme Court may rule differently. It's a 6-3 conservative supermajority. 3 of them were appointed by Donald Trump himself, right? But when it comes to making the case, clearly the facts are aligned with those who say Donald Trump is an insurrectionist who should be kicked off the ballot. And again, it's worth pointing out, it wasn't Democrats who brought the case. It wasn't the Democratic Secretary of State of Colorado. It was Republicans and independent voters who say that Donald Trump is ineligible to hold public office. They were the ones who make the case. Republicans brought the case. Conservative legal scholars support the case. And who knows what will happen in the end. But just know, no matter what, Hugh Hewitt, as triggered as he is wrong. Let me know what you think in the comments.